Thanks for sharing your garden with us. And right now we're going to be talking about herbs for the summertime. That's right, plants that will take the summer heat and also freshen up your kitchen table. I'm joined by Cindy Phillips, who's the co-president of the Austin Herb Society. And Cindy, welcome to Central Texas Gardener.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, of course. And I know that you're a longtime herb gardener. We were just talking about that you've been gardening with herbs for over 20 years. So I know more than a few things about these tough little plants that we're going to be talking about here. And I think that's the first thing that I'd like to start with, is to let people know how easy these are really to garden with.
They're very easy to garden with. They're drought resistant, and the deer don't eat them, which is a big plus where I live.
Right.
They repel insects in your garden. If, they guard your vegetables. They taste good. Every cook should have a few herbs at least.
Right. Well, more than a few. It's so easy to grow them here in Central Texas. Generally speaking, let's talk about how you would prepare a site for herbs. Now, this is the one thing that I think is critical. If you're going to grow herbs, it really does take a prepared site, because they really want good drainage, right?
That's true. They like to be raised up a little bit. They want good drainage. They hate to get their feet wet. And they don't take any particularly rich soil. I've got herbs that grow, they jumped outside my garden and are growing in the caliche. So they're really good candidates for, and they grow well in containers. Almost every herb grows really well in a container, as long as it's well drained and sunny. They like sun.
That's right. Well,
lots of sun.
Those are the key things. I think you've said it all right there. Is the sun and good drainage, and being raised up a little bit, whether that's in the ground or in a container. They're really easy to grow. And and you indicate, they, for the most part, repel pests. I don't really know of any severe problem with pests on any herb.
I don't either. I haven't experienced that.
Yeah.
And they seem to protect my garden vegetables too. I've got sage and lemongrass and rosemary that grow outside of the perimeter, just right outside my fence. My fence that keeps the deer out. Those are the biggest pests for most anything. But deer don't generally like herbs either.
Right, right. They may nibble, but they won't gorge themselves because of the strong flavor, which they don't like. Well, I can't think about herbs in Austin without thinking about the basils, and it's one of the glories of summer. Fresh basils with fresh tomato. There's nothing like it in the whole world, and there are a host of different basils that people can choose from. Now, we have with us a number of different varieties. I'm going to pull these out. We can talk about a couple of different compact forms here. One right here that is a little globe of form. And look how tiny, I want people to see how tiny these are.
This is a really good container plant. It's real pretty. It makes just a little bouquet.
Right. Well, you can see that it would be quite literally a little globe-like form in the garden. And our producer, Linda, says this is one of her all-time favorites. She really loves the flavor of this one. Now, what would you use this for in your kitchen?
Everything.
Really?
In the summertime, I get so excited by the basils. You can this small leaf variety, you can just pick the leaves off and put it in soup. And the rule with using fresh herbs is to use maybe 2 or 3 times as many herbs, as much as you would dried herbs. And also basil dries very well, and you'll usually get a very big crop of it. So
be prepared to dry some, because it will last.
Or if you don't want to do that, just put it in the blender, the leaves, not the stems, and with olive oil or with tomatoes, and blend it up. Put it in the freezer. You can put the olive oil just in the refrigerator and use it as you will, on tomatoes, or with
great.
mozzarella and ripe olives.
Well, I have here a little. It's called purple bush basil, and again, this I think shows kind of the ornamental qualities that a lot of these plants have, because it has a really nice bright color to it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love things with purple stems and green leaves.
Yeah. And this is one that you could use in the same way that you just described. These are all culinary plants.
Yes, all the basils.
Right. So just get, and it's some, you know, the nice thing is that you have all these different flavor varieties as well. I'm going to put these up. And we have here African blue, which is another blue form.
African blue gets really big, and it has really pretty blue flowers.
Let me
and
hold on to that
it seems to be more cold hardy than the other ones. African and Thai, I've protected into late winter.
Okay.
By covering them when it's cold.
And there are a whole host of lemon scented and flavored herbs, and including in the basil family too. This little guy right here is the lemon Tabriz, which is a really delicious smelling plant. I was pinching the leaves on this and really imagine basil and lemon.
That was a very lemony one.
Yeah, just terrific plants. And again, in containers or in the ground. Typically in the ground, these guys start to get pretty bushy, don't they?
Oh, and that's one thing that I would like to share with you is they do get bushy and they bolt as soon as it gets warm. And you need to keep plucking the blossoms, but don't just head them. You should cut them way down here.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because if you head the blossoms, that encourages more blossoming.
Ah, I see.
So what you want to encourage is more leafing.
Right. So be a little dramatic in terms of the pruning.
Yeah, get down, below the second note or so there.
Well, again, tons of different forms of basil, and you brought a pot here of holy basil, which is really a wonderful plant from India, I believe, and there's Thai basils, just a whole host of different things that people can play with in the garden. But I don't want to just focus on basils because you've brought a whole bunch of other things too. And this is a sweet marjoram. It's in the oregano family, actually, which I think some people would be surprised by. And these are also fairly easy plants to grow here, aren't they?
They are, and they're milder than oregano. They're very easy to grow. When I was in England a few years ago, we visited a ruined castle, and marjoram and oregano were still growing from the kitchen garden that they had all over the hills.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
And mint, it was
Centuries
great.
later, they just kind of become part of the landscape, right? And of course, there are all different uses for these for cooking, but just a delightful plant to have. And I want to bring this one down. This is one that you can find, and this is one of the most ornamental, I think, of the herbs. This is Mexican marigold, Mexican oregano. And this is one that often gets covered with just beautiful lavender flowers, a great plant for the garden. And this is one that has a real kind of
has a very robust flavor. And it's a robust plant. It blossoms, and then blossoms turn kind of brown. You have to, you can trim it frequently, and it keeps a nice form. If you don't, it tends to get a little leggy. But it has a nice presence in your landscape. I wouldn't put it in the garden. It'd be too big. Well, for my garden.
Yeah, I think mixing it into the ornamental landscape is exactly where you would use this plant. Because you're right, it does get kind of outsized for a lot of people when they have herb beds. They tend to be kind of small.
Yeah.
And this is one that will definitely get kind of large. Right next to you, we have a couple of thymes. And just talk about cultivation of the thymes briefly, if you would.
Well, thymes, they really don't like to have wet feet. They like to be in a sandy sort of, or red granite is great for them. They're real great between paving stones. There's a couple of forms. There's one that gets bigger and bushier, and then low-growing ones. I have this one in my garden.
Right.
And I had the lemon thyme. I had a little bit more trouble with it, trying to put it in a pot.
Right.
But I was watering it too much, I think.
Well, that gets back to that whole thing about good drainage. And, we didn't even get to talk about half of the things that we have here with us, but there's lemongrass and different forms of mint and Mexican epazote. There's so many things that people can play with here. And real briefly, the Herb Society meets every month, right?
Every first Tuesday of every month.
Right.
From 9 to 12 at the Zilka Garden Center.
Right.
And we have great programs. We have the best refreshments? Anybody?
Yeah, I'll
Any
bet you
club
do.
has? You know?
Anyway, well, we appreciate you so much being a part of the program today. Cindy, thanks for sharing your knowledge of these great summertime plants for Austin. And now it's time for Skip Break.